Hi, it's Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. Today I'm going to share with you my favourite Christian fiction books from last year. That is, books that I read from last year. So these are all books that I've given 5 stars to on Goodreads. That means that they got a 9 or a 10 out of 10 for my story enjoyment rating. If you missed the video I put out last time about the Christian faith content in books, I will link that down below so you can have a look at that. That goes through all the Christian fiction books I read last year with their ratings and the Christian faith ratings, but these are the ones that I enjoyed the most. So as we're looking through, let me know in the comments your favourite book from last year. First of all, I've got some honourable mentions to give you. These are books that almost made it to the list. They were mostly 8.5 out of 10 books. Almost there, but not quite. So we have While the City Sleeps by Elizabeth Camden. This is historical fiction, mystery type of book. And Bear Night by James R. Hannibal. This is a young adult fantasy, Christian fantasy book. As well as Lion Warrior by James R. Hannibal. Those two books are the second and third books in the Light Raider trilogy. A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure by Angela Bell. That's also a fun historical travelling romance and kind of adventure type of book. Hidden Current by Sharon Hinck is a Christian fantasy book, the first book in that series. I think it's called The Dancing Realms. The Juliet Code by Basham is book 3 in the Freddie and Grace Mysteries trilogy. That's a historical mystery. Enjoy that one as well. And Meet Me at the Starlight by Rachel Hauck is a dual time historical, sort of contemporary historical romance and family drama type of book. Then we have one reread that was a 5-star for me, and that is On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson. This is the first book in the Wingfeather saga, and we'll see another of those books turning up in a minute. I reread this book, I gave it 10 out of 10 again, and a 1 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. This is middle grade fantasy, very quirky, very whimsical type of series. So on to my top favourite books that I read for the first time this year. Let's start off with the fantasy genre, fantasy and sci-fi. And as I mentioned, I read another of the Wingfeather saga. This is book 3. This was the first time read for me, The Monster in the Hollows. This is continuing the story of the Igby, never sure if I get that pronounced right, children and their family. And it is, as I said, fantasy, middle grade, very whimsical, very creative as a story in a world. This one is more in the more in one place than the second book. It has a lot of school themes going on, new place, moving to a new place kind of themes, feeling like you don't fit in kind of themes, and it is continuing to tell us about the world more. This one was more character driven than the last one, and I still really enjoyed this story. I have the last book to read. Hopefully I'll read that this year. I gave this one 9 out of 10 and a 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. A Christian sci-fi that I really enjoyed, gave 10 out of 10 as a rating and 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating, is The Chaos Grid by Lindsey Lewellen. This is book 1 in, I don't know if it's going to be, I imagine it's going to be a duology, guessing by how far they got through the story, but I'm not sure. And this is following Juniper, who is in this kind of dystopian type of futuristic world. The world is dominated and run by synths, and she is a basic who is trying to survive in a tech-controlled city, and her aunt and uncle want her to go back to a city that she came from, that she really does not want to go to. And so in order to escape from that, she sort of takes this job working for a trucking kind of firm that goes out of the tech-controlled cities into the wasteland desert around where it's all kind of a bit like the Wild West and futuristic Wild West. The book made several references to God. It is also a retelling of one of the books of the Bible, but I don't want to tell you which one so that I don't spoil it for you. I really enjoyed learning which one it was as it was going through. I was like, oh, that's what it was, because I didn't know beforehand. So I think it's great to come into this book without knowing beforehand. You just need to know that it is a retelling. The main characters are kind of sassy and snarky, but in a good way. And they are facing like mutant monsters, drug users and dystopian armies and that kind of thing. It was full of action and also a slow burn romance. So I'm excited to see the second book in that. I really hope that it does come out this year. But yeah, it was really worthwhile reading that one. The third Christian fantasy book that I gave 5 stars to is The Light of Iden by Karen Hancock. This is an older series that's being re-released now in new hardback copies, but it is a classic Christian fantasy series. It is following Abraham, who is training to be part of a religious order, but then just as he's about to become part of that, things go wrong and he ends up being sold into slavery and sold as a gladiator. One of the things I loved about this one at the time was the allegory of Christian faith in there. It reminded me of the Roman Empire and the slaves and the gladiators sort of feel to it, and how Christians might survive, grow their faith, become Christian in that kind of era and that setting. It also reminded me of the biblical books of Daniel, Acts and Revelation. This was an epic fantasy that had many twists and turns in it. It is, on the surface, it is action following the plot through many different cultures and countries, but at its heart it is following the character development and spiritual development of the main characters. There is a fair amount of violence in this book, and there is one closed door sex scene, but the consequences of that are played out, and yeah, it wasn't sort of promoted, as it were. It played out, and it played a part in the character's development and coming to faith. I believe there are maybe 4 books in this series. It's quite long. This book was quite long, so yeah, I want to continue with the series, but it is going to be a chunker, I think. In contemporary romance, I had a couple of books. One is a novella from this collection, A Season to Wed. The novella is called A Brush with Love by Rachel Hauck. This is following Ginger, who is a hairstylist, and she is booked to do a wedding, and she was stood up in the past by a guy called Tom, who turns out to be the best man at the wedding. Ginger is still angry with Tom that he disappeared and didn't contact her again. The story contains a lot of character development. Ginger has scars from the past. In fact, they both do, and they have to work through some of those things throughout the novella. Ginger is going on a spiritual journey and learns to trust God for the first time, and Tom is the new pastor in the area. I gave it 9 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating and a 3 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. And then we have Positively Penelope by Pepper Basham. This is book 2 in this Skimar series. It is written in kind of emails and text messages and messages, as well as some narrative styles. We are introduced to Penelope in this story. She's one of the cousins in the main characters, and she absolutely loves Julie Andrews. She's very optimistic, and she gets the opportunity to go and work at a theatre in Skimar in order to help them out. She meets Matt, who is grappling with wounds from the past, from a painful divorce and bereavement, and they are sort of getting to know each other. They're quite different in personalities. It's a bit of a grumpy sunshine kind of mix there. The plot centres around the theatre needing to get more money to save itself and to bring in more customers, and also Matt's need for healing. So Penelope brings in a lot of optimistic joy, and yeah, she's very upbeat, and I enjoyed this one very much. I thought the romance was kind of swoon-worthy at times and had a little bit of the Beauty and the Beast feel to me at the beginning. There was some faith content. It was clear that the characters were Christians, and I felt like Penelope was probably like a newer Christian, younger in her faith, and definitely still learning about things. I gave it 9 out of 10 for story enjoyment and 2 out of 3 for a Christian faith rating. I completed some historical fiction series this year. I've got 2 books from the Matchmakers by Jen Turano. There's A Match in the Making, which is book 1, and To Spark a Match was book 2. Those 2 books I gave 5 stars to. A Match in the Making is set in Newport in 1888, and it follows Gwen, who takes the position of a companion to a matchmaker, only to find herself employed as the assistant matchmaker. Book was a lot of fun. The characters were feisty, almost to the point of being annoying, but they didn't cross that line for me. It was a lot of fun. They were really sparring with each other. There was also loads of side characters as well, keeping the book interesting. There was some faith content there, but it was quite minimal, so I gave it 1.5 out of 3 for the faith content, but 9 out of 10 for the enjoyment rating. The second book is a fun historical romantic suspense. The book is following Adelaide, who, due to her trying to help out one of the guys that she knows, she ends up getting ostracised from society because it all goes wrong and everything was happening to her, and so she has to try to get back into society. Gideon feels bad about that, and so he hires Camilla to come in and help her regain her poise and get back into the society. Gideon is a secret investigator as well, so there is a case going on at the same time which Adelaide really wants to get involved with as part of getting to know Gideon. I enjoyed the characters. I thought they were unexpected and didn't fit into the norms. There's more suspense in this book than in the first book, and there is still a lot of humour and physical comedy going on in this one. There was 1 or 2 moments when the characters' Christian faith came to the forefront, but most of the book reads like a clean fiction, so it's on the lighter side of Christian fiction. I gave it 1.5 out of 3 for Christian faith rating and 9 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating. A Winter by the Sea by Julie Klassen is the second book in the On Devonshire Shores. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy of 4 books. It's following 4 sisters who have taken over a guest house in Sidmouth. They were forced to leave where they were because of difficulties, and so they've taken up running this guest house with their mother. This is in Regency, England, and this one's following Emily, one of the sisters who has always wanted to marry her childhood friend, but also wants to publish a book. A royal duke and his family come to stay in Sidmouth, and Emily becomes interested in them. Some of the staff move into their guest house, and so they're becoming a part of what's happening there. This was a heartwarming story of love as well as family affection, and there's also a love triangle that goes on there, which deciding who Emily's going to end up with. The pace is sedate, but I really got back into it again. I enjoyed coming back to this place. This place is actually very close to where I live, so I really felt at home in the setting. And also really enjoyed revisiting the main characters again from the first book. There is a sort of Christmas theme to this book. It takes place over Christmas, but it's really a wintry book, so this would be a great book to pick up during the winter time. I gave it 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating and 9 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating. My memory on my camera just ran out, as well as the battery's about to run out, so I'm now balancing a power pack between my knees so that we can keep going for the rest of this video. But where did we get to? Another series I've been reading is Texas Ever After. If the Boot Fits by Karen Wittemeyer is the second book in that series. I gave this one 10 out of 10 for story enjoyment and 3 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I couldn't fault it. I felt I enjoyed it a lot. The story is following Asher, who believes his stepmother has been wrongfully evicted from her house by her landlord, and so he breaks into the house of the landlord, who is this sort of guy who owns land in that area. It's a kind of not Wild West, it's sort of Texas. It is in Texas in 1889, I should say. He breaks into the wealthy landlord's house during a party. He just tried to find evidence to try and prove that his mother was wrongly evicted. While he's there, he's almost caught by the daughter of the house, Samantha, and she is furious that her father has invited so many men to try and marry her off to one of them there as potential husbands for her. Asher escapes, leaving only his boot behind. The book is inspired by Cinderella, although it's not exactly a retelling, it's more sort of inspired by that. It goes on its own direction as it goes through. I liked the combination of the gentle romance with the feisty main characters. The first half of the book focuses on the romance, but then there's another subplot that's introduced later on which kind of adds to the jeopardy of the situation there. There was a lot of good Christian content in there, and faith plays a definite role in the characters' lives and decisions. So this one was definitely a really good one to pick up if you like that sort of time period. I've never read before this series, read into that sort of time in American history. It doesn't really appeal to me, but because these have fairy tale links to them, I picked it up and I've really enjoyed this author. And finally, I have 2 books in another series, and those of you who followed me for a while might not be surprised to find that Rosanna M. White makes it onto my favourites list again. She is one of my favourite authors to read in the historical genre. I really love the combination of her romances with spies, mystery, intrigue, that kind of thing. And this is the Imposters series, books 1 and 2 I read this year. A Beautiful Disguise is the first book, and it is following Lady Marigold, who is a flamboyant character in society. She has very over-the-top costumes, and it's sort of there to attract attention and draw attention away from who she is. It sort of serves as a smokescreen for her real occupation, which is a member of the Imposters, which is like a private investigators type of firm, it's private spies type of firm that investigate cases for people for money. Her and her brother have inherited an estate, but they don't have any money, so they're having to pay their way by taking on these roles as the imposters, but they don't want anyone in society to know who they really are. I loved the main character Marigold, who was struggling with her facade as being the society lady, whilst also the dangers of her other occupation. The spy plot had multiple layers of mystery and secrets, and the romance plot showed the characters' flaws and insecurities, as well as their other strengths. The characters' faith was integrated into their lives and guiding their decisions, but in this book it was not a major plot line in the story. The ending was a satisfying ending and tying up lots of plot threads all together at the end. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And then the second book, A Noble Scheme, is probably my favourite or most memorable book of this year. It is following another character in The Imposters called Gemma, who is a companion to Marigold. She's also known as G.M. Parker, who writes about society in a column in a newspaper. This book is following Gemma and Graham, who are 2 side characters in that first book. They are at odds with each other. They are complete enemies at the beginning of this book, and you don't know why, and part of the book and the story is finding out what happened to get them to this position and whether they can ever resolve their differences by the end of the book. Graham uses his architectural skills to help the imposters and to find out secrets about buildings and that kind of thing. The central mystery in this book involves a plot to kidnap a boy. Him and his cousin are very similar, and his cousin switches places with him, so he ends up being kidnapped instead of his cousin, and it all gets very complicated. And so the wealthy family won't pay for one of the cousins is wealthy and the other one is not, so the wealthy family who was meant to be the one kidnapped would not pay for investigators for the other cousin, and so that family comes to the imposters asking for help. I was hooked by the compelling mystery in this book, but it was really the complex exploration of the characters' emotions like grief and anger and forgiveness, especially in the context of faith and suffering. I can't go into too much detail on here, but you should know that there are some heavy topics in here like grief, and it does involve, the book doesn't involve children, as I've said already, but in multiple places. So if that's something that's very triggering for you, then this might not be the best book for you to pick up just now. But it was, despite being very kind of gut-wrenching, it was also heartwarming and a good exploration of how suffering and faith maybe work together, are at odds with each other. It just sort of explored all those kind of human emotions and deep emotions. I also found the Christian allegory in the book woven into the narrative was very impactful, and it was a multifaceted story, so thrilling and mystery on the one hand, emotional, spiritual depth and romance as well in there. So I think this was my favourite book of the year in terms of being most impactful and memorable and emotionally charged book. But let me know in the comments which book is your favourite book of the year. I would really love to find out which books you could recommend from the books you've read last year, and any Christian fiction recommendations that you have. Please leave them down in the comments. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, please do consider subscribing so you don't miss future videos. If you'd like to see more videos about Christian fiction, you can watch these ones over here. But until next time, I pray God bless you and your families. Happy reading week. Bye.